I'm Andy, welcome to Narcolepsy Pumpkin. If you haven't done already, why not click on subscribe and click on the bell. That way you get notifications when I post new videos.
So what we're actually looking at now is a refactor of the main part of the code. One of the first things I'm doing is splitting out this code into several different projects. So we've introduced a new Gilded rows core, where we're putting the actual core, if you like, the functions that do the stock update have been placed in their own project. So that's a separation or decoupling. So now we're going to go through the main function and refactor this into smaller sections by creating lots and lots of small functions that just do one thing. The main aim of this is to remove as much duplication as possible. And if you notice, I've actually moved out a lot of the constant that are the identifiers for the different product lines. And also some of the frequently reused integer values for the max and min values. It's also important to make sure that things are named as clearly as possible, so I don't shy away from using huge function names if that helps to define what that is. So into now starting to break down some of the logic into smaller chunks to get rid of the swathes of nested if statements that currently exist. So I'm starting to introduce now is actually moving this first step towards being functional and change some of these to actually return either the same value or in this case, first step is always going to return the same item that's passed in. So it's using the function as a pass through. And this starts to enable us to have a pipeline that's functional. So we're passing in the item and returning a new item that's been augmented. And in this first pass, that will actually be a reference to the same object. But sorting out the logic first, in my opinion, helps to solidify how that functional flow is going to work, and then you can address it returning a new instance if it has changed, rather than returning a mutated one. Again, don't be afraid to play around with the names of functions, rename them. Even sometimes go backwards to go forwards. Sometimes refactoring code's a bit like a dragon lock, where you have to go 2 steps backwards from where you got to actually make progress forwards, to find out what was wrong, or the wrong way of doing it, before you can see what the right solution actually is. So we're getting close now. This is actually, almost a functional pipeline. Running the tests again and showing that I've got a little bit of a logical error in here, which you'll see me debug. And this is where having that full suite of tests as a fallback is absolutely crucial. Some of you may have spotted what the actual error is here. It's all based on the fact that it's returning the increment after the if statement as just one increment, rather than, because it never gets to the second part of the code. So the less than 11 returns straight away, whereas previously it would have returned the first increment, then moved on to the second one. So it would have done the 2 increments, mutating the object, and then passing back the object after 2 increments have occurred. So all we have to actually do to fix it is make that first one do 2 increments and the second one only do 1. And there you can see the test is now passing, and logically that now works. Possibly still got too much in one function. So resolved all that larger function out into little separate steps that are a little more single responsibility focused. So pretty much got the whole thing stacked out into lots of separate functions now. So now what I'm looking to do is try and pull things out that are effectively changing for the same reason or have the same reason to change. So we're actually changing some of the groupings of these functions within different classes. So now I'm going to introduce a gateway class. So this is the bit that it's kind of against the flow of the what we're asked to do as the task. But I'm going to actually create an interface for the item, and my aim in this is to actually get rid of that item class entirely. So I've got to a point here where I can't sort of go any further without introducing something. So I'm now going to upgrade these projects to .NET Standard 2.1. So I'm moving away from .NET Framework 4.8. I'm moving to .NET Standard 2.1. Could have just as easily switched this to .NET Core 3.1. Actually, changing the projects across is actually a fairly easy process. You can basically just unload the project and actually manually just change the project file, because the new .NET Core and .NET Standard project files are so simple compared to the old ones. You can, pretty much just chuck the stuff in, then just go and re-add all the NuGet package dependencies back in. So it's just some little teething problems getting all the packages in and sort of up and running. So a little bit I actually managed to miss out the Microsoft.NET Test SDK there. Bit of a schoolboy error, but this is what you get with doing code at 1:30 in the morning, which I'd advise against in a real life scenario. So now I'm going to add in Shadow Quack, which is my own utility library to allow you to just implement interfaces on the fly, either from other objects or from completely dynamic built objects. And it also allows you to merge, so you can override a single property in the original. So I'm merging the original item and then merging that with a dynamic that has an override for the quality. And that all gets bundled into a new, completely new object. So we're not actually mutating what's passed in at this point. And so this is slowly removing the need for the item class completely out of the code. So also starting to use the duck implement function as an imported static now, so that you can just do implement and the interface name and pass it in a generic with the right values in, and that's it. There's no need to have any concrete classes defined in the project at all. There are also extensions for Shadow Quack that allowed you to just pass in JSON text, XML text, which are very useful in testing scenarios and for doing APIs. Item class is now gone completely. Just tidying up the last few references to it. So we're doing exactly the same thing. So that's the refactor complete. We're now going to look at the Conjured item implementation. The first thing I'm going to do is add a unit test project for the Conjured item tests. Just pinching some of the functionality out of the existing code to build up my test for the conjured items. So now we've actually done the legacy code transition, we're now actually doing a test first approach to adding the new functionality. So I've created a failing test first, and then I'm going to implement a solution to that. You even get to watch me get it wrong, quite catastrophically wrong, a couple of times, but I've got that test there to make sure that I do get the right outcome, and also I've got the existing suite of tests to make sure that all the other functionality is still working. So I'm looking at only conjured items. I'm just looking through what the existing extensions I've got. For some reason I randomly decided to add the increment function there, which, as you'd agree, is completely wrong. Because all these are extension and we've got this nice pipeline, you can kind of add the function in any way you need. So, one, I've kind of got the logic wrong, and two, I've added it in the wrong place. So I've added it the wrong side of the line. And it's really easy to move that function because it's just an extension method and part of the pipeline. So you can move these things. Once you've got all the parts there, you can move them around. And there we are. All done, all working. So now we've got it working. Well, let's refactor the new Conjured function. So we'll do exactly the same as we've done with the other ones. We're going to move it into the same class. So we've got the change it to an isConjured function, so we can get rid of that. And there you go, we can see we've got, if we remove this sort of command line application that was with the application, we've got 100% code coverage on this. So that's all checked in. This is all available on GitHub for you to have a download of, to branch, and to have a play around with.
I'm hoping that from this, I've given you something valuable to take away and something to think about in the way that you approach your legacy transitions or even new greenfield code projects. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and please, if you haven't done already, why not click on subscribe and click on the bell. That way you get notifications when I post new videos.